Right, morning everybody, and welcome to the opening session, or an opening session of BES 2017. I'm Marilyn Druce, and I'm here in my capacity as Chair of the Public Engagement Committee for the Society, and this session is co-chaired by Laura Udakis, who is from the Society itself. The purpose of this session really is because you'll all know that scientists and clinicians are being asked to demonstrate their impact of their work more and more, or evidence engagement with wider audiences. And engaging with the news media is perhaps one of the most impactful ways in which you can reach directly to the public. The Public Engagement Committee and the Society in general are very, very committed to supporting all of the membership of the Society in their public engagement endeavours, whatever they may be. And this session is a part of that. And it's part of a series of activities and events, including both basic and more advanced media training. Some information today from lots of different individuals about their experiences of or advice around engaging with the media, and we hope at the end of it that you will feel sufficiently inspired to consider joining a list of media ambassadors where you will be supported in taking forward some work with engaging the media further and forward. We'll talk a little bit at the end, perhaps, about wrapping up with some of the other ways in which we can support you in engaging with the public. But I think with no further ado, we'll move to introducing our first speaker. We're delighted to welcome Giles Yeo, who many of you will know from the Society itself, described in the Daily Mail not so long ago as engaging geneticist, and described on his Twitter feed as occasional BBC producer. I'm not a BBC presenter. I'm not entirely sure it's so occasional anymore. Certainly every time I turn on the TV now, Giles is having the opportunity to share something around what we should or shouldn't be eating, or why we might or might not be getting fatter. And hopefully Giles will share some of his media expertise with us. So thank you, Giles.
Thank you very much for... Hello, testing. Can you guys hear me? Good morning, guys. I am very impressed by the number of people here for this first session. My name is Giles. I'm from the University of Cambridge, and I'm here to talk about the media and whether or not we should engage with the media. And I think I'm going to give you a spoiler alert, okay? And the spoiler alert is that I'm going to give you the answer before I actually get to the actual presentation. And I think the answer is yes, we should engage with the media. But not only should we engage with the media, I think we have to. And there's going to be three small parts to my talk. I'm not going to bore everyone silly. The first bit is I'm going to set up my argument about why we have to engage with the media, particularly today. The middle bit of the talk will be how to frame your message, which is what I'm going to talk, that middle section. And then the final bit is actually my experiences of actually doing it, engaging with the media, and the pitfalls with each of the different types of mediums I have used to engage with the media and actually to engage with the public. So I think it's always useful to start with what I do, and it frames the way that I have actually tried to engage with the media and the challenges. And I'm a geneticist, and I study, although I'm now told I have to say endocrinologist. I sell myself as a geneticist, but I am at the SFE. So I'm a genetic endocrinologist that studies obesity. And I guess the message that is actually put out there by myself, my colleagues, Steve O'Ratley, Sadaf Faruqi, all of us that are actually out there, is that obesity, there is a choice in obesity, but there really is not that much of a choice in obesity. There's a huge biological variance in terms of how we respond to the environment, and there's a huge genetic influence on our body weight and our behavior around food. Now, that is a difficult message. Okay, it's a difficult message out there, and it's like swimming against treacle whenever you actually out there trying to put forward this message. Okay, so all my experience in engaging with the media is framed against this swimming against this treacle, okay, about the fact that obesity is considered a disease of choice and moral failing. Okay, so this is where they're around. So underlying the whole thing is the question of whether or not you believe me, not you, okay, because obviously I'm speaking to endocrinologists, but actually when you're speaking to the public, okay, do you believe me? Which seems to be an interesting way of framing it, but I think it's an important way of actually framing the discussion. So this is Neil deGrasse Tyson. I think many of you will know him. He's an astrophysicist. And this is his famous quote, okay? You can read it. And the critical bit of this quote is that the good thing about science is it's true whether or not you believe in it, okay? And that's certainly very good. That's why it works. That's certainly very true. The problem, however, is that we always have this situation in which we're framing science versus faith versus belief. And when we're talking about science, you think, we shouldn't talk about belief because it's not about belief. It's about looking at the evidence and actually trying to understand the evidence. And once you understand it, then you can make a decision based on it. It shouldn't be about belief. But I think there's an issue here, okay, that we need to take into consideration. The consideration is that we all have to take a leap of faith. All of us have to take a leap of faith outside our field of speciality. And because everyone is an expert in our own little patch of real estate, okay? But we do rely on experts every day in everything that we do so that society works. Now, I realize that it is obvious to actually state this, but I think it is key that we do remember this, right? And because after all, how many of us actually know how the brakes in our car works? Okay, I mean, I know there's some hydraulics. I know when I press, I know the car kind of stops and a red light appears. Do you really understand how it works? Okay, I mean, I think a lot of us here will agree that about evolution, but how many of us, okay, are actually qualified to look at the primary data? Okay, we all fly. Do we know how the plane works? As far as I can gather, every time I see a metal object actually going through the air, there's a lot of magic that's actually involved in which this actually happens. Okay, so clearly, the way this works is that we have some form of trust that some expert out there is doing his or her job in order to so that we can fly, so that the car stops, and so that we understand the climate change biology that is out there. And the reason we do this is not because we're experts at every single thing, but as scientists we understand that consensus is key. Okay, the problem is consensus takes a long time, and everyone always thinks about experts, don't trust the experts, thinks about academics, and thinks about a situation where we're all arguing with each other. I can't believe these people. They don't even agree with each other. Not knowing, and this is one of the things we have to frame, not knowing that it's our job to disagree with each other. It's our job to actually have discussions and to argue and to have the disagreements rather than having some form. But this takes consensus, and consensus takes time, and humans are impatient, okay, and which creates a vacuum. Okay, and this vacuum that we're in, particularly today, then provides rooms for alternative facts, whatever. Okay, in this post-truth world, it provides room for a lot of silly things that are out there. So, but why do so many people believe what is to others so obviously false? And I think this is a key part of today, the key part of the post-truth world that we live in, and a major issue. Okay, and sadly, it does depend on who's saying it. Look, this is me. I did a program with Deliciously Ella. Okay, now I don't know anyone who's going to believe me. Okay, in terms of doing it, but Ella has. If you look at her media profile, she has millions of followers. She has cookbooks. She has 3 cafes, and she talks about diet, and she talks about how it's good for your health, and a lot of people believe her. Okay, now I study obesity. I study how food intake works. I don't know how many people believe me. Okay, in terms of the general public, I realize how advertising and marketing works, and clearly one of us is more marketable than the other. All right, but we shan't go with who is who, and then there are other people that are out there. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Goop. Okay, and this is Goop is Gwyneth Paltrow's website, okay, and I'll just draw you one example here, where she sells many things. This is a lifestyle website, including jade eggs for your yoni. Now, I realize this is an endocrinology meeting, but I shan't go too gynecological about this, but let's just put it that jade eggs are sold. They're about 60 quid each, okay? They're sold out. In fact, you have to get in line. And gentlemen don't have a yoni, okay? It's and you put it up anyway, but they do all kinds of things. She just had a whole session on the thyroid, okay? Goop had a thyroid month or something like that, in which she professed all forms of things about thyroid. Anyway, all joking aside, that's fine. Pretty people selling stuff on social media, selling stuff on websites, it is insidious and it is a problem. But where I really do find the main problem to be is when experts, in inverted commas, profess things, okay? Because then we have an issue of the public not knowing who to believe. And this, to me, is the biggest problem that we have today. So anti-vaxxers, anti-climate change, the President of the United States. So each of this have their ways in which a doctor says that vaccines are bad for you, or scientists says that climate change. Now, we here understand and can look and can actually look at the data and can actually understand this. But put yourself in the position, okay, of the public, trying to look at this and trying to actually unpick what is real and what is not real. And so I think to put it down purely to stupidity and ignorance, why we believe, is lazy. I think it's a lazy argument. And I think it's a lazy argument because then we're not doing our job in actually putting forward the right argument. And this, to my mind, is why we have to engage with the media. Because whatever we're doing and whatever field we are actually an expert in and trying to actually put the message out there, the media is by far the most impactful, as the chair just said before, way to actually get to the public. Yes, you can do public engagement talks, but how many people do you reach, right? So the media, and so we have to speak to the media, because if we don't speak to the media and actually say what is the truth for whatever that means that's actually out there from a scientific perspective, who is? Idiots like that, okay, where do have a PhD at the end of their name, do have a doctor in front of the name, and or if you are the President of the United States, then people think that you should have the access to all of the information to actually make decisions. And so I do think, so this is the ending of my first bit, this is why we have to engage with the media. Okay, now, we don't have to do it the way that I do it, but I think we do have to do it so that we put forward truthful messages, well-balanced messages, nuanced messages that are actually out there. Okay, so academics today do have a particular duty, and I think we do, all right? I don't want to sound too, bully pulpit about this, but I do believe this. Particular truth to stand up for the truth. I'm going to use a word I hate, but I will use it. I do think we have to be passionate about the truth, because that is what should matter the most in terms of when we stand up and actually engage and actually talk to the public. We have to speak about the truth in all its warts, and it's all its complexity. We have to be able to do this. And it might be more difficult because it's complex, because it's not a simple message, but we have to be able to do it, and we have to be able to put forward the complexity of science to the public. Otherwise, people think that we're actually simplifying. We're simplifying it too much, and that is very, very dangerous. Okay? But what is critical is that how we do it also actually matters. So this is a Calvin and Hobbes. Okay, it's one of my favorite cartoon strips ever. Bill Watterson stopped drawing it in the late 80s or early 90s. Okay, and this is part of a problem in academia. Okay, in research-based things, in which using big words, and it is a problem everywhere, where using big words is supposed to show the public or whoever, non-experts, that you are clever. The problem is, what happens with using big words is you end up with situations like this. Okay, so this is a cartoon from the New Yorker, where the moment you detach yourself too far away from the public in the type of language that you lose your message. And if you lose your message, they're not going to listen to you. And if they're not listening to you, they're listening to someone else, as I'm saying again. So I just want to deal with the way that I think we should structure the message. This is not being prescriptive. This is just the way that I happen to think about things. But I think it's a useful way to think about things. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not trying to tell anyone how to put out your science. I think we all here can put up a science. I'm talking specifically about how to speak to non-experts via the conduit of the media. Okay, so we clearly have to think about our message, our audience, and our medium. I think this is quite obvious. But I'm just going to give you a couple of little tweaks as I go through this, and also the pitfalls which I have faced. So the first thing is how you actually frame your message, and I think we should frame our message: why, how, and what. Okay? Once again, some of this is going to be very obvious, but it's very useful to actually sit and think about things before we ever have to engage with the media. So why, how, what is the foundation for, in fact, I think it's the foundation of all communication, but it's the foundation of certainly of academic communication. Okay? And so what is why, how, what? Why is why are you doing what you're doing? Okay? What's the question almost? How have you chosen to answer the question? And what have you found? Okay? And what does it mean? So why, how, what? Why, how, what? Clearly, if you paste it against what the vernacular that we're used to, it's the introduction and aims and objectives for why, approach and materials and methods for how, and the results and discussion. Okay, so this is just to put the framing in terms of in language that we all actually understand. But the reason why I like the why, how, what way of framing things, it's a completely scalable concept. Okay? So it goes from individual experiments, so I'll be slightly facetious with an example. My question is, do these primers work? Okay, so why am I doing this experiment? I'm doing this experiment to find out these primers work. How have I chosen to answer the question? I have done a PCR. What have I found? These primers do not work. Okay, so this is a very basic level, slight thing. That's an individual experiment. But clearly, you can ask the why, how, what to your project. Why are you studying this disease? How have you chosen to study disease? And what have you done? When you running a program grant, when you're running an institute, you have why, how, what. The difference in answering the question to why, how, what is the amount of information you provide. And the amount of information you provide and the amount of detail you provide entirely depends on what scale you're answering the question. And I think that is another important thing. So don't supply too much detail depending on what. You're not going to talk about PCRs if they're asking about your project. You're maybe not going to talk about individual projects when someone's actually asking about what your institute does. And the way you actually go through this is you scale the amount of information that is there. Now that's from a scientific perspective, but use the same principle when you're actually doing it and speaking, when you're actually speaking to a non-expert. You scale the amount of information that comes across. So in other words, you don't dumb down. I'm going to get to that in a second. I hate that term. You don't dumb down. What you do is you change the amount of information. You give the relevant information, but the information you give is true, is correct, but you just don't give too much detail because some people just don't care about the detail and really should they care at all. So that's the message. Now, how you actually put forward the message, so this is the potential audience that are there, and I think we here are probably academic, speaking to each other, academic non-specialists, or specialists, whichever you want to look at. And I've listed this in what I consider to be the level of difficulty of engagement. Okay, so you can see, and this, I think it's a surprise to many people. Some of my students, for example, say, really? But isn't it easier to speak to the general public? And I think no. Okay, and the reason is why no is because we can use shorthand when we speak to academic specialists, and so we can be so succinct with what we say. Our information is so dense within a couple of sentences because we use a shorthand. Whereas we cannot use that shorthand as you actually go down and when you actually get to the general public, even in our why, how, what type of answer. Okay, and here's the thing, because you do have to simplify, but simplify cannot equal wrong, because we have to be passionate about the truth. We have to tell the truth. The moment we try and simplify and we get it wrong, and someone finds this out, we lose trust. And if we lose trust, we're in trouble. And there is this test, we do it when we actually vie with students. This is the cab driver Theresa May test. The cab driver test is if someone picks you up from the train station to bring you here, can you tell the cab, you may choose not to engage, of course, but if someone asks you what do you do, can you tell the cab driver what you're doing? But then there's also the Theresa May test, which is an interesting one in of itself, is to, when you go up to Miss Moneybags, can you convince someone, this is a grant a writing exercise, can you convince someone why your work is important enough, okay, to fund compared to cancer, compared to the Zika virus, compared to anything that is, that is there. So not competing against other diseases, but why your disease is important enough to study. But once again, when you're putting information out to the media, it's critical that we are actually able to do this. Simplify does not equal wrong, and never, to my mind, never use the term dumb down, because the moment you use the term dumb down, you have already put forward the relationship. Okay, you are dumber than me. Whereas clearly, what we're trying to do is speak to a non-expert. If someone has to come and speak to me about high-energy particle physics, they've got to really, really simplify the stuff. Otherwise, I'm not going to understand what's going on. And we're supposed to be intelligent human beings. So never use the term dumb down, because I think that is a bad start to the whole. That's a bad start to the whole exercise. So just let me give you some what might be quite obvious examples, but I think it's always useful to actually think about. So this is just a Western blot from our group, okay, and I work on I have worked on a protein called FTO, okay. So what this shows here is that why we're interested in FTO is because genetic variation in FTO is linked to obesity. We know that fasting reduces it. We were interested in knowing what within the fast reduced it, so we worked with cell lines. And what we did was we found out that if you actually amino acid starve the cell lines and you measured FTO by Western blot, that actually FTO levels dropped, mRNA levels as well as protein levels. And so we think that amino acid starvation reduces FTO levels. Okay? Now, I just spent maybe 15 seconds explaining that to you. Okay, and now to a specialist audience, everyone would broadly, they may not have understood the intricacies of it, but everyone would broadly have understood that. So the question is, how do you take something which is actually quite dry, okay, a piece of information which we think is interesting, and how would you then take that and put it to a non-expert audience? Okay, so the first thing is when you're talking about, remember, simplify does not equal wrong, and the amount of information you provide is going to be absolutely critical. So I think the obvious things you can remove. What's a Western blot? Is it a Northern blot, Southern blot? Okay, clear, that's a silly thing to actually do. But even if we go down to the things which might be more obvious, like expression, okay? Now, the term expression, which I have there, FTO expression. If I ask for expression here or within a scientific audience, people immediately think, are you talking about protein or gene expression? If you go to the bus stop and ask about expression, then people are thinking something else. The word you're using, your facial expression. And so it's something where expression does not seem to be a difficult word at all in any way, shape, or form. And yet the way we use it is so out of context to actually the general public that it then becomes a problem. And the moment you use it and people do not understand, you lose them. Okay? So the reason why communicating is difficult is because you have to take a message like this. You have to take a message and you have to really strip out the unnecessary details. So for example, is it actually useful to put the gene name at all? Okay, so in some cases, maybe, but will the public really care that the gene is called FTO, for example? And will the public really care if we're talking about the mRNA levels or the protein levels? Now, it depends what the message are going to be, but you have to think about it. Okay, before, if this was a big finding, you have to think about it before someone sticks a microphone into your face. So, how about the medium? Okay, so I've listed it, broadly speaking, roughly about audience reach, okay? In order of audience reach, from speaking, obviously I'm speaking to you, and so I get maybe 20, 30, 40 people in the crowd, all right? To writing, to social media. If I was Taylor Swift, my social media would be a lot bigger, but I'm not, so it's right in the middle, and then radio and TV. This is the audience reach, and I think we all can actually understand this. But this is your editorial control, okay? Your editorial control goes from complete editorial control till none. And I'm going to give you just some examples here with the pitfalls and how you try. And editorial control, the moment you lose it and you have no control, people get very nervous about this. And this is why a lot of people don't engage with the media, because they feel that the media is going to twist their language. The media is not going to twist your language. They're trying to put forward, they're trying to actually simplify the message you're giving them. So if you don't simplify it enough, and if you don't give it to them simplified, they will simplify it for you. Okay, and that is a huge problem. So I'm just going to give you just some examples here. So I did a public lecture for the Physiological Society in St. James's Park, not in the stadium by itself, just in the conference center next door. And this is fine, okay? I did a public lecture, and so therefore people are there and they listen, and I have full editorial control like you would in a talk, okay? So that's easy peasy. Now, then you can do writing. This is something which I wrote for the Sunday Times in support of a program which I did a little while back. Why would you do this? Because the reach of the Sunday Times is hundreds of thousands of people, so therefore you're able to reach a number of different people. You begin to lose some editorial control, because although I was in charge of the copy here, I wrote this down, they then edited it for language and what have you. But once again, this is not a problem. Then, don't judge me, ladies and gentlemen, don't judge me, but I also write for the Daily Mail. Okay, now, why? These are questions that we can ask. But my feeling that if you're gonna put forward a message that's difficult to actually understand, sometimes maybe you got to hit the people that need to know it the most. So this particular example, I'll be 30 seconds. This particular example here was in the Olympics. Okay, and I was walking a few miles from here in Yorkshire on a cliff. And then what happened was, in the evening, as I saw Jason Kenny and Laura Trott, who, as you know, are cyclists, winning their 10th gold or whatever it is, and Jason Kenny and Laura Trott are now married. Now, when Jason Kenny won his 4th gold or something, Laura, like I said, they're now married, tweeted, surely our kids would get some of these genes. And half an hour after this happened, as I was watching it, I got a call from the Daily Mail health editor, asking, can I produce a piece about the likelihood of Jason Kenny and Laura Trott producing Olympians as children? I'm going, pardon? What? So, but I felt that it was useful to actually do something with complex genetics. Anyway, I was in charge of copy once again, and so while they changed the language, because I could approve copy, I was happy to do it. I don't know if I would be happy to do it as an interview for the Daily Mail. And finally, that's the stuff with telly. And so my closing thing here, actually, about telly and about media and about someone sticking a microphone into your face, is how little control you have over telly. And the reason why you have little control, I'm going to give you just a very quick example, and I'll shut up. A very quick example is you get a journalist, or director, someone sticking a microphone in your face and asking you, give me an answer to this. And what, as good scientists do, we go, caveat, 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 nuance, nuance, caveat. And people go, oh, yes, that's that. And the director will go, that was wonderful. That was so eloquent. It was fantastic. Shorter, okay? And so what then happens is if you do this after 26 times, you end up with a haiku of fat is bad, okay? So after 26 takes, it goes to fat is bad. And because you've done it 26 times, you're trying desperately to actually control the message. So, okay, you have no control over the situation. So my view is the way to actually do it, when someone sticks a microphone in your face, and this is not so unlikely, is you have your why, how, what ready to go. I'm not going to do social media. You have your why, how, what ready to go of what you're doing, whatever finding you have. You should be able to do your why, how, what in 10 seconds. In 10 seconds. And the reason why you want to do it in 10 seconds is because 10 seconds is short enough where you're unlikely to be edited. Okay, so this is what I found out, is they're looking for a soundbite. If you can do it in less than 10 seconds and keep repeating it, then you're not going to be edited, and at least you have some control over what you're going to do it. Then you can have an elevator pitch of 1 minute that you're actually doing that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions. I'm sorry I ran over.